Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hi, I'm Maria, in case you don't know me. I am the owner of Baffling Beads AT, a shop for handmade beaded jewelry, and also another shop, Baffling Beads for You, for checked glass beads. You can find both shops over on Etsy. The links are down below if you want to check them out. But I also create tutorials and studio vlogs that I post on YouTube. And today it's time for another tutorial. So before we start with anything else, I want to thank you all for letting me reach monetization status here on YouTube. It didn't even take me half a year, so I guess that's pretty quick. Thank you so much for being here, for leaving me feedback, for watching my content, and so on and so forth. It really means a lot to me. That's why I decided to post the tutorial for my Neomi hoop earrings. I think that one is actually the most requested tutorial, so it's finally here. I really hope that you will enjoy this one. I hope that I was able to improve the quality of this tutorial. I actually recorded it yesterday when the sun was out and the weather was nicer. So I hope that the footage turns out okay. Otherwise I will need to do it again. I read all your feedback on the last tutorial for my Coburn bracelets, and I did notice that there were some parts that were out of focus. I thought that you could still follow along, but I guess quite some people are having trouble with that tutorial, so I really tried this time to pay more attention on staying in focus. I will move it closer to the camera, so I hope that you will see it better. And I also made the rainbow hoop earrings so that you have all kinds of different colors that you hopefully can follow along more easily. I do plan to post an improved version of that last tutorial, so please stay tuned for that. I don't know when I will find the time to post and record this one, but I keep it in mind, so just so you know. And yeah, I'm really sorry that some of you are having trouble with that tutorial, but I really hope that this time this tutorial will be better. I really tried. So as I said before, I recorded the tutorial yesterday, and after I've shown you how I bead my Neomi hoop earrings, I will see you back here. So please enjoy. So this is what we are going to need for these hoop earrings. I've got 6 different colors of Miyuki Delica beads in size 11/0, and as you can see, this time I'm going to show you my color codes in case you also want to make LGBTQ or rainbow hoops. And then I've also got Miyuki round beads 15/0 and the color 1051, which is silver. So I will note down these color codes for you in the description box. Then we will also need Miyuki beading thread in size B. This is the silver color because I'm going to use sterling silver hoops. These sterling silver hoops have a diameter of 3 centimeters. Of course you can use smaller or bigger ones, but then you will need to adjust your bead count. So I chose the rainbow color so that you can follow me along more easily. But of course you can also make color gradients like I do. These are my turquoise Neomi hoops, also with sterling silver hoops. And then I also have them with brass hoops, like these. But for now, let's use those rainbow colors. You will need about 2 arm lengths of thread. And then you will tie a double knot on that hoop. And you need to leave a little space for tail thread so that you can then weave it in and tie some knots. I will then push it to one end, like this, and then we can start beading. I will use both the brick stitch and the herringbone stitch for these earrings, so if you want to learn more about these stitches, please check out the tutorial I will link up there in the corner or down below in the description box. But you don't necessarily need to watch these videos. So let's start by taking up 2 Miyuki Delica beads of your first color. In my case this is going to be red. And I will start this earring by beading the whole first row along the hoop with this color. So you push them down to your hoop earring. You go from the back to the front, you pull your thread through both beads, you pull tight, and then you go back up through that second bead. And then you have your first 2 beads sitting right next to each other. We will now add onto this row of hoops with a brick stitch until we have 38 beads along this hoop. It's all going to be red. So you take up a bead, you push it down from the back to the front and right back up through that bead, and you pull through. And you want to have it sit tightly next to those other beads. So you don't want to leave any space in between. You take up another bead, you push it down, from the back to the front and then back up through that bead. And you pull tight. Again, we'll pick up a bead, push it down, and back up through that bead. And you're going to continue this until you have 38 beads on that hoop earring. So I'm done with the very first row. Those are 38 beads, which I brick stitched along that hoop. And we will now continue with the second row. And for this I'm going to turn over my hoop. And then you take up 3 of those 15-0 Miyuki round beads. And then you go back down through the second bead on the very first row. And this places those 3 beads on the first 2 beads of the very first row. And then you go back up through the third bead. And now we continue with the herringbone stitch. So for this you take up 2 beads of your second color. In my case this is orange. And then you go back down through the bead on the right hand side of that third bead, so the fourth bead. So that you place those 2 beads right on top of the 2 beads below. You can see that they begin to sit at an angle. You go up through the 5th bead, right next to those beads. You can adjust them a little. And then you continue this way. You take up 2 beads and you go back down through the bead right next to the one you're coming out of. You pull a little tight so that they sit at an angle and they're not straight. And then you go back up through the bead next to them. Take up 2 beads again, you go back down through the bead next to the one you're coming out of. And you go back up again through the next bead. Okay, we're almost at the end of the second row. Then you go back up through the second last bead, and then you take up 3 of those silver beads again, the 15-0 Miyuki round beads, and then you go back down through that very very last bead, like this. And you pull that thread through the hoop so that you can then go back up to that very last bead. You don't want to go through the second row, only the first row. And you're coming back out of that very last bead of the first row. We turn it over. Then you go back down through the second bead of that first row. And then you go up through the third bead of the first row and the very first Miyuki Delica bead on the second row, like this. Then we start the third row by adding 3 Miyuki round beads. And you will add them on top of the second row by going through the second bead on the second row. And you place them on top of that second row. Then you go up through the third Miyuki Delica bead on the second row, sorry. And then we continue again by taking up 2 beads, 2 Miyuki Delica beads, and beading that herringbone stitch. And then we will again add 3 Miyuki round beads at the end. So I take up 2 beads of my third color, which is yellow in my case, and I go down through that next Miyuki Delica bead, and you go back up through that next bead on the second row, like this. You take up 2 beads again of your third color, you go back down through that next bead, and back up again. Take up 2 beads, go back down, You will now add the last group of beads. You take up 3 of those Miyuki round beads, and again you go to the back of that hoop and you pull the thread to the front again, and then you go back up through both beads. So this the first and the second row. Turn it over. You go back down through that second Miyuki Delica bead on the second row. And then up through the next bead on the second row and the first Miyuki Delica bead on the third row. And again, you take up 3 of those Miyuki round beads. You go back down through that second Miyuki Delica bead on the third row. And back up through the next bead. You take up 2 beads of your 4th color, which is green for me, and you continue with your herringbone stitch. You go back down through that next Miyuki Delica bead. Back up again. So the longer your columns of beads get, the more careful you need to be about your thread tension. Because you need enough thread tension that your beads sit straight onto each other so that they don't turn and twist. But you shouldn't use so much tension that the columns of your beads get wonky, so that they tilt to the left or the right, because they need to be straight. So I think that's the most difficult part of these earrings, just paying attention to your thread tension. And again, we add those last few Miyuki round beads. You go back through all those 3 rows. and you pull your thread through the hoop. Go back up. This time I only went with the very first row. You can do it the way I did it before, or like this. Then you go back down through the next bead and then you go back up through all those beads. The important thing is that you come back out of the very first Miyuki Delica bead on that last row you're on. So this time we're going to add 2 groups of 3 Miyuki round beads. We go down through that second Miyuki Delica bead on the 4th row. Then you go up to that next bead. You take up 3 round beads. You go back down again. And up again through that next bead, and then you will add your 5th color. Mine is blue. And you continue with your herringbone stitch. Now it gets a little trickier with your thread tension, so be careful to not pull too tight. So you want to hold the beads you just added to your earring and then go up through that next bead and pull so that they sit straight and they're not twisting. You hold them, go up through that next bead, add the next 2 beads, you hold them, go up again, and by the end of this row we will need to add 2 groups of silver beads again. That's the first one. And that's the second one. You go back down through all those 4 rows. And you pull your thread to the front of that hoop again. Like this. You go up through that bead you're coming out of on the back, but only the very first row. You turn it over and you're coming out of that very first red bead, which is located right below that last Miyuki round bead group we just added. You will go back down through that next bead right next to it on the first row only. Go back up through that bead next to it, only on the first row. Back down again through that bead next to it, and back up all the way. And now we need to add 2 more rows. So again, 2 groups of Miyuki round beads, and now you continue with your 6th color minus purple. And we add 2 groups of Miyuki round beads again. You go back down all the way to the back of the hoop and you pull your thread through to the front. And you go back up through that same bead you're coming out of, but only the first row. I go back down through that bead next to it on the first row, and up again through that next bead again on the first row, back down again, and all the way up through those purple beads. And this is what it looks like now. Now we only need to add 5 more groups of Miyuki round beads, and then we will tie the knots. I'm now going to add the last group of beads. I'm going down all the way, but I stay at the front of the hoop. So for now we've added all the beads. This is going to be the finished earring. And now I will secure the thread. So for this, as before in my other hoop earring tutorials, I will again use those thread bridges along the hoop to tie my knots. So you're coming out of one of those red beads and you will use the thread bridge on the left hand side. So you will pull your thread through. This will form a loop and you will tie a knot with the help of this loop. You will go up through the bead where you used that thread bridge so that you can pull in the knot. So this is then of course the bead on the left hand side of your bead you're coming out of. You will only go through the very first row, and then right on the left hand side through that next bead you will go back down. That's your first knot, and I will tie 2 more. So again, you take that next thread bridge on the left hand side, we'll form a loop, use it to tie a knot, pull a little tight, and then you go up through that bead where you use the thread bridge, and you will pull in that knot. One last time, you go down through that next bead on the left hand side on the first row. Go through that next thread bridge, tie a knot, and you go up through that bead where you use the thread bridge. Pull in the knot and then you go down again through that next bead on the left hand side. And that's it. Now you can cut that working thread. Now you thread your needle again. So we already have a double knot right here where we placed our first red bead. So I go up through that first red bead, you pull in that knot, you go back down through that next red bead, and you will place one more knot right with the help of that next thread bridge, so below that third bead. You pull your thread through that third bead on the first row, pull in that knot, and then you go back down to the fourth bead, and that's it. So this is it. That's the hoop earring we just made. Of course you can create all kinds of color combinations. And this is what a finished pair looks like. Here they are. So I find that these hoop earrings are super fun. They are not the easiest to make, but I think it's a very rewarding design to make. And yeah, you can play around with the herringbone stitch. You can also adjust the size of your hoop just by increasing or decreasing your bead count that you're using. So I think you can very easily adjust this design to the hoops that you have and that you want to use. They shouldn't be too thin, so they shouldn't be thin wires, because I think that the beadwork or the herringbone stitch will move around too much if the wire is too thin. So I would suggest to use some sturdier hoops for these. But I don't think that there's really more you have to pay attention to. Let me know if you try out this design, whether you choose the same hoop size and whether you're going for rainbow colors or an ombre design. I usually use luster transparent beads, but of course you can also use matte beads or opaque beads, maybe satin beads, whatever you like. And I really do enjoy making these. So let me know what you think. Please leave me feedback again about this tutorial, whether it was easier for you to follow along. I'm still learning over here, so I try to get better, but of course I can't record videos all the time, so yeah, just leave me feedback, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I will note down all the color codes down below in the description box. As I said before, you can also find the links to my shops down below in the description box, and of course also all the links to my social media like Instagram or TikTok. So if you're interested in glass beads, beading content or small business studio vlogs, then please consider subscribing, maybe leave a like, leave a comment. I appreciate it all. And yeah, for now I'm out. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye!